Don't you ever wonder how much money would save if politicians and councillors just did their basic job and dropped all the woo-woo politics? Now, you take Sydney's Northern Beaches Council. It's gone through money like nobody's business. And now residents are outraged. The council wants to hike rates by nearly 40%. That's about nearly $700 for each household. Yet this council has had money for diversity programs, money for a new climate Indigenous heritage office, money for climate change strategy, of course, which council doesn't have that, and environmental education, money for a sustainable living action plan, and more of that same tiresome. I'd be angry if I were a taxpayer too. But the higher up you go in government, it's the worse it gets. Today News, New South Wales Government, its Treasury Department, is checking projects for their gender impact before funding them, analysing how an issue might affect women, men or gender diverse people differently. Joining me are Daniel Wild, Deputy Executive Director of the Institute of Public Affairs, and Gemma Tonini, founder of GT Communications, columnist, sage, so much more. Gemma, since you're a sage, I'll start with you. This whole diversity and equality industry, does it actually do any good?
I think that back in the day, it possibly did. And I want to put some context around that. I think there has always been a time where change needed a little bit of a niggle on, a little bit of a help around that. And I mean, I grew up, I'll give you an example, Andrew. When I was a much younger person, I applied for a job at the ABC as a young journalist, and the cadetship that I applied for was called an NESB cadetship, someone with a non-English speaking background. And I'm obviously half Italian. We spoke Italian at home. I'm fluent in Italian. So that, I didn't get the job, spoiler alert. But that sort of initiative, I think, can be helpful. The problem is rarely the thing. It's usually how it's applied, and when certain sectors of the community, or let's be honest, certain sections of politics get hold of it and take it to the nth degree, that renders it useless, expensive, ineffective, and has a reverse effect. So I think that perhaps in its initial stages it may have been useful, and I think I can think that, as a woman, I can also say that there have been times where it hasn't been fair and it hasn't been equitable. I'm 51 years old and I'm old enough to remember what that was like. So, but I think where we sit today in 2025, it's out of control, and it absolutely needs to have the tree shaken, so to speak.
I get your point, but the problem I see with this tribalism is that once you start favouring one tribe, other tribes want their go at the trough. And it's a zero-sum game. Certainly, males, Christians, whites, Asians, Jews, they don't really get there, but almost everyone else does. Example, Daniel, Victoria, our reddest state, has beaten New South Wales. It's now got a law requiring the government to take what it calls an intersectional approach to gender impact assessment by considering the compounding effect of other factors such as Aboriginality, race, age, disability, religion, gender identity, ethnicity, and sexuality on gender inequality. I mean, Daniel, just writing that stuff would have cost them a mozza, trying to understand that rubbish as well. Actually doing programs to check for all that, can you imagine?
Yeah, well, no wonder the Victorian government's primary vote is in the 20s when you're going on with this, when you've got $200 billion in debt. They paid $1 billion, remember, not to build a road. They don't even have an airport link, a train link to the airport, and then they're talking about this. The infrastructure is crumbling. You've got this massive population growth that hasn't been planned for. So, a lot of people look at this and they just can't believe that our taxpayer dollars are being spent on it. When you talk about New South Wales as well, I was quite surprised to see that. From Victoria, you sort of roll your eyes and shrug your shoulders and go, here we go again. But, the New South Wales Treasurer, Daniel Mookhey, I think is starting to look a little bit kooky. If he's going to go down this Victorian path of, wokeism and DEI. I don't know whether this is sort of the department putting the cart before the horse, as they are sometimes want to do. But, at the end of the day, the government's got to take responsibility for this. And I would have expected a lot more from the Minns government, which has been pretty sensible, it's got to be said, on a lot of economic matters. They kept the coal-fired power station going, for example. So let's see. But I just think Australians have had a gutful of this, and they just want services provided on an equal basis. It's pretty simple.